Welcome to the fourth lecture in series of lecture on semiconductor memories. In first three lecture, we discuss about the basic of semiconductor memories, types of semiconductor memories, and then we discussed about NOR-based ROM, way the data can be returned to the NOR-based ROM, its mask layout, way data can be read from the NOR-based ROM. Then we discussed about NAND-based ROM, way the data can be stored into it, the data can be retrieved from it, and the circuitry required uh, to the circuitry which is built around these ROM arrays to decode the row address and the column address. Today we are going to start our discussion with RAM, random access memory. So we know that semiconductor memories are divided into two types. First is read-only memory and read-write memory, which is commonly referred as random access memory. Random access memory can be further divided into two types. One is static RAM and second is dynamic RAM. So the classification is based on the way data can be stored in the cell. So in static RAM, basically there are inverters. So based on uh, the load which is used in back-to-back connected inverters, so based on the load device which is used in these inverters, there are three types of static RAM. One is the resistive load, second is depletion load, uh, inverter SRAM cell, and third is CMOS SRAM cell. So in our discussion, we'll be covering these three types of SRAM cells, and we'll be discussing about 1T DRAM cell and 3T DRAM cell. And then we'll be discussing about the circuitry required to read data from these cells and write data to the cells. So let's start our discussion with the SRAM cell. So SRAM cell is nothing but a latch, and it consists of back-to-back connected inverters. So this latch has two stable states. Now you can see here, this is first inverter and this is another inverter. The output of this first inverter is connected to input of the second inverter, and the output of the second inverter is connected to the first input of the first inverter. So they are back-to-back connected. So this comprises 1-bit SRAM cell. Now the cell can be accessed through the switches. This is first switch and this is another switch. They are connected to the column lines like we have seen in the RAM array. So the random access array, there are rows and columns. So the cells can be accessed using these columns, and the switches are controlled by the word line, which are also called as rows. So here the cells has or the SRAM has two complementary column lines. These these are in these are useful in reading data from the SRAM cell. Now, if you want to see in detail, I don't want to discuss this in detail, but if you just want to know why there are two stable states, so it's the answer is there in VTC of this inverter. Suppose I consider this first inverter, so this is its output, this is its input. So if I draw its VTC, which is voltage transfer characteristics, it will look something like this: output and input. So this is stable state. This is one stable state and this is another stable state for this inverter, individual inverter. Now, if I consider this inverter, this would become the output and this would become the input. And then if I draw its uh, VTC, it would look something like this, right? Stable for the output or something, and then there's a transition, and then it will be input. So here you can see there are 2 points. This is first point and this is another point. There's a third point as well, but it's an unstable point. So the circuit will never remain this at this point, but it will remain either at this point or at this point. When the cell is storing 1, it attains this stable state, and when it is storing 0, it attains this stable state. So these are two stable uh, point in this SRAM cell. Now this SRAM cell consists of inverter, so we can draw a generalized diagram for inverter. An inverter basically consists of a transistor and a load device. So there are back-to-back connected transistor or cross-coupled transistors See, output of this is one inverter, this is another inverter. Output of this inverter is connected to the input of this inverter, and output of this inverter is connected to the input of this inverter, exactly shown in the above circuit. Now here, the type of load decides the configuration of the SRAM cell. Now, load device can be replaced with a polysilicon resistor. It can be replaced with a depletion type NMOS, or it can be replaced with the PMOS. If it is replaced with PMOS, then it gives us CMOS SRAM cell. Now, the cell can be accessed through switches. Switches are implemented using enhancement type NMOS pass transistors. So you can see the switches are here. So this is switch 1 and this is switch 2. So this is a very generalized structure of SRAM cell. Now, based on the device, type of device which is used for load, there are three configurations available for SRAM cell. So we'll study this three configuration in the next slide. So the first configuration is resistive load inverter. So here you can see uh, the load is replaced with these resistors, and this gives us first inverter circuit, and this is another circuit. So these are two switches which are through these switches the cell is connected to bit line C and bit line C bar. Now the resistors are fabricated using doped polysilicon or undoped polysilicon. So the polysilicon, if it is fabricated in undoped form, it has very high resistance, and its resistivity can be changed by adding some dopant to it. So based on the requirement of the value of resistor, the doping level or doping concentration of polysilicon can be varied. This type of cell has an advantage of a compact cell size, because these resistors are normally fabricated using polysilicon. So this polysilicon can be fabricated on the top of this diffusion layer. So if there is a diffusion, this SRAM cell is there, on the top of these resistors can be fabricated. But there is a consequence of such kind of fabrication, because these gates can be fabricated using a polysilicon layer, and these resistors are fabricated using another layer of polysilicon. So it's a multiple polysilicon layer. So multiple polysilicon layers are required for such type of fabrication. Now, there are certain criteria which are used for the assessment of this type of SRAM cells. So first criteria is, let's say, noise margin. So noise margin is one of the criteria. So we always want a better noise margin. So if you want better noise margin, that means your VOH should be closer to VDD and your VOL should be closer to 0 or ground. But here, to have this VOH or the maximum voltage pulled to the VDD, these are pulled through these resistors to VDD. And because they have some finite value, there's a possibility that there is a voltage drop. Whether there will be voltage drop. So it is very difficult for these points to attain VDD value. So VOH can be will be always smaller than its VDD. To improve the value, we should keep this resistor's value, R value, to be smaller, so that the drop across this resistor will be smaller, and its VOH and VOL will be closer to VDD and ground, so which improves the noise margin. So for better noise margin, this load resistance value should be smaller. Then it also helps in having a smaller cool time, because the delay is RC delay is nothing but the product of resistor and the capacitance, parasitic capacitance of these transistors. So if the resistance value is smaller, then the pull up time is very small. So for a better response or a faster response, resistance value should be, so I'll write the speed. So better speed, your resistance value should be smaller. But then there is another criteria which is used for the assessment. If you remember, we have discussed these performance criteria, right? Access time. So this is the speed we are talking about. Yes. Then the, if you remember, there was one more criteria used for the assessment of memory. The criteria was the power consumption. So we are talking specifically about the static power consumption. That means when there is no read or write operation happening in the memory, it has to preserve the value which is stored in it. So amount of power consumed to store that or to preserve that value is the static power or the standby power. We can say the power consumption in standby mode. Now, for to minimize this power, the current flowing through this transistor should be smaller, because uh, because see this, it has to either say store 0 or 1, but while storing 0 or 1, uh, we'll see a particular thing about this. Okay, so let's talk about the standby power. So the cell will be either storing 1 or 0. Let's assume it is storing 1, right? So if it is storing 1, that means the gate of this transistor is pulled up, so it is on, and the gate of this transistor is pulled low, so it is off. Now, if this transistor is turned on, so there is always path for between VDD to ground through this transistor when it is storing 1. Now let's consider exactly opposite case where it is storing 0. So when it is still storing 0, uh, in that case, still there is a path for the from VDD to ground. So here when it is storing 0, there is 1 here. If this is 0, so this gate of this transistor is 0, so it's off, but it is 1, so the gate of this transistor is pulled high, so it is on. Now there is a path from the VDD to the ground. So we can conclude that irrespective of whether it is storing 0 or 1, there is always path from VDD to ground through one of these branch uh, via a transistor. So the power consumption, the static power consumption will always be there. Now to minimize this static power consumption, uh, one way is to reduce the current. So to reduce the current, to minimize the current, we have to increment the value. So for better power consumption, rather to be more specific, it should be static power consumption. For to improve the static power consumption or to reduce it, the resistor value should be larger because it minimizes the current. Now you can see for better noise margin and speed, resistance value should be smaller, but for better static power consumption or the lower static power consumption, resistance value had to be smaller. So there is always trade-off between uh, noise margin and static power consumption. So while designing, you have to consider both these factors. Okay, so that's about the resistive load inverter. It has advantage that the cell size can be compact as compared to the depletion load inverter, but its resistor value, deciding the resistor value uh, is one of the critical tasks here, because if you want to improve one factor, it affects adversely on the other factor. Okay, so let's discuss about the second type of configuration, which is nothing but a depletion load inverter. So here you can see the load device is replaced with the depletion mode NMOS. Now here the rest of the circuit is same. So this is one inverter, this is another inverter. They are connected in cross-coupled format. That is, gate of one transistor is connected to the output of the other inverter, and vice versa. And as we have seen in the resistive load inverter, the switches are implemented using NMOS fast transistors, and through which uh, beat line and beat line bar, that is C bar, can be accessed. Now advantage of this type of configuration is that here you don't have to fabricate two layers of polysilicon, because the load, there is a gate, polysilicon gate for these transistors like it was there for the resistive load inverter. But in resistive load inverter, you had to have a second layer of polysilicon for resistor. But here, because the loads are made up of MOSFETs, so the same polysilicon layer can be used to fabricate these loads. So one polysilicon layer and one metal layer are sufficient for this type of fabrication, which simplifies the fabrication process. Now a better noise margin, because when it is pulled, when it is on, it presents very small resistance. uh, so it will, whenever you want to store one here, it will be always pulled high because the resistance is very small, so the drop will be very small. So the noise margin improves. Also, when it is pulled down, so whenever, if you want to store 0 over here, then this is on, so the resistance of this transistor is very small when it is on, so it pulls down to the 0. So its VOL is very close to 0 volt, so it has better noise margin. But it has certain limitations, and one of the limitation is static power consumption. Because the loads are of type depletion uh, mode NMOS, so they are always on, and we know that uh, even if we are storing 1 or 0, there is always one of the branch through which VDD can be connected to ground, which increases the, or which results in the static power consumption. So the static power consumption is one of the disadvantage or limitation of this type of configuration. Third configuration is CMOS SRAM cell. So in CMOS SRAM cell, it has all the advantages that static CMOS circuit has. So it's lowest static power consumption. We'll see this point with one example. Let's say 1 is stored in this cell. So when it is 1, so this is applied to the gate of this, so it is on, but at the same time it is applied to gate of this, so it is off. So when the 0 is stored at this point, so it is applied to the gate of this NMOS, so it is off, and it is applied to the gate of this PMOS, so it is on. Now you can see in any of this case there is no branch from VDD to the ground, so there is no path for VDD to ground, because one of the transistor is always off, even if you consider 0 stored in the cell or 1 stored in the cell. So the power consumption is almost 0. The only power consumption or the power is due to the leakage current, and specifically through PMOS. Second advantage is better noise margin. For the same reason, when this is turned on, so it will pull, it presents very small resistance, almost negligible resistance. So its VOH is almost equal to VDD, and when it is pulled down through an NMOS, so it is its VOL becomes 0. The switching speed is also better because the resistivity of this is very small, or the resistance of this is very small, so it has a better speed switching speed. So if we summarize, out of these three configuration, static CMOS SRAM cell has more advantages than the limitation. Of course, static CMOS SRAM cell has disadvantage as well. The number of transistors need to be fabricated is more. So that is one of the limitation of static or CMOS SRAM cell. But uh, uh, this disadvantage does not overshadow the advantages, the other advantage like low power consumption or low voltage operation of this SRAM cell. So practically, this CMOS SRAM cells are widely used in the fabrication of SRAM. So in this, now let's try to understand the operation principle of SRAM cell. So before we start our discussion, our actual operation, let's have some observation about this SRAM cell. Now here, this is nothing but the SRAM cell, which is implemented using the resistive load inverter. Now these are two switches. Now these two switches are controlled by a world line. Now these world lines are activated by row decoder that we have discussed in RAM, random access memory structure which has the rows and the columns. So these are the rows we are talking about, or the word line. Also, there are column lines, like unlike the uh, type of memories that we have seen till now, there were only one uh, bit line, but here there are two bit lines. So this is one of the cell which can be accessed through these switches. Similarly, there will be number of such cells which can be activated using another row. So this is, if this is row 0, this will be row 1, and so on. This can be accessed through the switches. Now the switches are controlled by the uh, rows. Now, if you remember, there was a row decoder which was basically a combinational circuit, and the address bits are given as input to it, and when uh, for a particular combination of address bit, only one row is activated and the rest of the rows are pulled down to 0, right? So only one of the row will be activated, so that the switches will turn on and only one cell can be accessed. Once the cell is accessed, then the value can be read using these column lines. Now these column lines, which are also called as bit lines, are connected to VDD through a pull-up transistor. Now this is NMOS pull-up transistor whose gate is connected to VDD, so they are always on. Not just they are always on, but their VGS value is VDD, and their VDS value, VDD minus, let's consider this voltage at this column is C, so it's VDD minus VC, drain voltage minus source voltage, gate voltage minus source voltage. Also, this drain voltage is also VDD and VDD minus VCC. So it's VGS minus VTH. VGS minus VTH is always smaller than VDS. So these pull-up transistors are always in the saturation. Now, because such a number of cells are connected in the same column, and each cell consists of number of such NMOS devices which have their parasitic capacitances. So all these parasitic capacitance of these cells combine together to result in very high capacitance or very large capacitance for these bit lines, which is represented using this CC and CC bar. So these are few observations about the circuit which will be very helpful for us in our further discussion. So let's assume initially when there is RS is 0, that is during the standby mode, when RS is 0, M3 is off and M4 is off, right? So if it is storing 1, then this is 1, so this will be off, so this will be on, so it will pull down, so it will be storing 0. So, and if it is storing 0, then this will be off, and this will be storing 1, so this will be on. So this is storing either 0 or 1. Now that's okay. So when RS is 0, whatever value it has, it will just retain that stable point. Here we are interested in finding out the voltage at this column lines, VC and VC bar. Okay. Now to find out, we expect that the value to be VDD, but the value won't be VDD actually. It will be VDD minus VC is equal to, we'll see the value. Here the value can be found out. It basically depends upon the characteristics of the transistor, where you remember that there is a VDS, sorry, there is a ID and there is a VDS, right? So here when your VDS value is in VGS, VDD, sorry, its VDS value is VGS, then equal to VGS. In that case, VDS's value is equal to threshold, or VGS value is equal to threshold value, and which is given by this formula. So this is the absolute threshold voltage, and here there will be a body effect will come into picture, because this source is connected, it's ideally it should be connected to ground, but here it is not connected to ground, so there will be some body effect that we need to consider. So this is Fermi-Level potential, and this is voltage at voltage difference between the body and the source. So if we put all the values, considering VDD is equal to 5 volt, column voltage comes out to be 3.5. So the voltage at these columns are 3.5. So we are more interested in this. So when RS is 0, voltage is approximately 3.5, or in general we can say that it is less than VDD. Yeah. So now let's look at the operations. So first we'll start with the operation of write 1. Now whenever any operation need to be performed on a cell, then cell need to be accessed first. The cell can be accessed by activating the row line, that is by pulling it up. So RS is equal to 1. So let's consider the write 1 operation. So when RS is equal to 1, this is on, this is on. So both these transistors are on. Now let's assume that 0 is stored here. So because this is 0 which is stored here, and this is 1 which is stored here. So because this is 0, so it is off, and because this is 1, so this is on, so it is pulling it down. Now let's look at the write 1 operation. So when write 1 operation is to be performed, let's assume 0 is stored. So here we have 0 and here we have 1. Okay, or voltage at node 1 is 0 and voltage at node 2 is VDD. Now when we want to write 1, VDD voltage is applied here and 0 volt is applied, 0 volt voltage is applied here. And when this RS becomes 1, this is on, the switches are turned on. So the 0 is applied to this node 2 or V2 through M4. Now as this voltage becomes 0, the voltage at this point is pulled down. As it is pulled down, so it turns off. As it turns off, so there is no current flowing through it. So it is not connect. This point is not pulled down to the ground anymore. So this voltage becomes 1. As this voltage becomes 1, this M2 is turned on. As M2 is turned on, so there exists a small resistance path to the ground. So this is pulled down to the ground to 0. So this is how 1 can be written to the cell. So one thing you have to remember, whenever you want to write 1, this becomes 1 and this becomes 0. So normally while writing, you have to always remember 0 is dominant. So even if you want to write 1, you have to consider the operation considering C bar equal to 0, right? So this is something you should remember. Now while write 1, you can see C voltage, that is equivalent 3.5, but C bar is pulled down like we have seen, and then the value is written to the cell. Now after a read or write operation, the value of these lines are pulled low. One of the value, or one of these transistor, one of the column line is pulled low. So we have to bring it back to its original position where the value of both the transistor is 3.5 volt. And for that, we have to do something called as equalization. And so this equalization must be carried out. So that's why the operations are normally carried out using the pre-charge kind of structure or the dynamic form, so that during this negative cycle, you can see 3.5 was there, it is retained at this column, but C bar was pulled low during write 1 operation. So during this pre-charge or equalization, this is pulled up. So after this, it will become 3.5 and 3.5, so that the next operation can be carried out. So let's look at the next operation, which is read 1. So in the read 1 operation, that means 1 is stored in the cell. So this is 1, this V1 is 1, V2 is 0. Okay, because V1 is 1, so this is on, and there is a short channel path through this, and this is 0, so this is off. Okay, so this is the condition in standby mode. Okay, so we have not accessed the cell yet. Now for read 1 operation, what is done is RS is equal to 1. RS is made with, that is row is activated. Now when the row is activated, these transistors M3 and M4 are on. Of course, before because of the equalization voltage at these of the both these bit lines is 3.5 and 3.5. As soon as M3 is on, so this one, that is VDD, is connected to 3.5. Of course, it will try to charge this capacitor, this CC, or the effective capacitance of this bit line. So here this effective capacitance of this bit line CC bar is connected to 0 volt, so it is connected to ground through this. Now we try to discharge this capacitor, we try to discharge through this M4 and M2 to the ground, but because the voltage at because the capacitance value of these line is very large, hence is RC constant is very large, so for a stipulated time it won't drop to 0, but the voltage on these bit line will be dropped by a very small amount, which is in hundreds of millivolt. So here you can see the voltage will drop. Okay, from our discussion we can conclude that voltage at this point should drop and voltage at this will remain same, that is 3.5. So it will drop by a few hundreds of millivolt, approximately 500 millivolt, let's consider. So the voltage at this will become 3 volt. So whenever we want to read 1, voltage at VC bar drops, which is shown here, you can see. So read 1, 3.5 maintains, this column maintains 3.5 value, but this for this value the voltage drop is there. Now there is another circuit which is a read circuitry. This circuitry always compares the voltage at these two columns, C and C bar. So when voltage at C bar is less than voltage at VC, of course by few hundred millivolt, the voltage difference is amplified and it is interpreted as 1. Okay, I'll repeat. Whenever voltage on column bar or a bit line C bar, the VC bar is smaller than VC, that is voltage on this CC capacitor, then the difference is amplified and it is interpreted as logic 1. And the drop happens because the 0 was stored here and the capacitor charge tries to, and this is on, then capacitor tries to discharge through this. Okay, so this is what you have to remember. So while reading the value, comparison of VC and VC bar, VC is the voltage on this line and VC bar voltage on this line is important, and we should remember this. Okay, now let's look at the operation of write 0. So initially when RS is 0, this is 3.5 and this is 3.5, right? So 0 voltage, 0 is we have to write 0. So let's assume that there is 1 stored in it and 0 is stored in this. Now because 1 is stored in this, so this is on, so it is pulled down to 0 and this is off. So this is the situation before writing 0. Okay, so let's see write 0 operation. So in write 0 operation, 0 will be written here, so this will be pulled down to the ground, and here there will be 3.5 voltage because this is logic 1, right? So when this line is accessed, that is RS is equal to 1, the cell is accessed through RS by making this line equal to 1. Now when RS equal to 1, these transistors are on. Now in earlier case, we have seen that we just said that the 1 is stored here and the 0 is stored here, right? So because it was previously storing 1. Now here as these M3 and M4 are turned on, so what will happen is this VDD is, or the 3.5 is applied to this point and the 0 is applied to this point. As 3.5 is applied to this point, this M1 transistor is turned on As it is turned on, so there exists a small resistance path to the ground for this node 1. Now V1 becomes 0, right, because it is pulled down. As V1 becomes 0, it is connected to the gate of M2, so M2 is in cutoff state. As it is in cutoff state, so there exists no path between this point and ground, so it is pulled up to logic 1. So now uh, it stores 0 because there exists a small resistance path over here, and it is pulled up to resistance 1. So this becomes 0 and this becomes 1. So this is how 1 can be, this is how the 0 can be written into the cell, right? Read 0 operation. Now fourth operation that we are considering, of course, every write and read operation, after every read and write operation there will be equalization. So in this case, uh, let's assume that we are performing read 0 operation. So that means 0 is written here, and 0 is stored here, and 1 is stored here. Now when RS is equal to 0, this is 3.5 and 3.5. Okay, this is the situation when the cell is not accessed and in standby mode. So when RS become 1, let's see what will happen in the circuit. Okay, so when RS is 1, this is on, this is on. So we are saying that 0 is stored in this and 1 is stored in this. So because this is on and this is off, right? And the voltage at both these bit lines was 3.5. Okay. Now, as these are turned on, so this 1 is connected, or node 2 is connected to bit line, and this CC or the capacitance is connected to 0 or is connected to ground through this M1. So when this capacitor is connected to ground, so it tries to discharge through M3 and M1 to the ground, and this capacitor CC bar tries to charge through this M4. Okay. Now here, because the value of this capacitance is very large as compared to the parasitic capacitance of this, so its RC constant is very large. So it discharges by very small amount, by very few, like 100 of millivolts. So this C drops by the voltage on this C, that is VC, drops by small value. It gets approximately changed to minus 3 volt, sorry, 3 volt, and this retains the value of 3.5 volt. Now while it is trying to read 0, you can see here VC is less than VC bar. Now there is a read circuitry which compares this, and it interprets as read 0. Exactly it has done for read 1, but in the opposite manner. So that's about the operation of SRAM. I hope you have understood this. You just go through it once and try to understand it in better way. Yeah. So the power consumption, static power consumption, is given by the voltage into current. That's a simple formula. So voltage across, you consider any cell, because whether it is 1 or 0, so if it is storing 1, then this is the situation, this is on, so there will be power consumption or the current flowing through this. And when we are storing 0, so this is 0, this is on, 1, so this is on, so there will be current flowing from VDD to ground through this. So here voltage across this point is VDD and current is nothing but drain current. So this is the formula for drain current, and because both of these are in the saturation, so the current is given by this formula. So the standby power consumption is given with this formula. Okay, so that's the formula for standby power consumption when there is no read or write operation happening. Okay. So now let's discuss in details about the CMOS SRAM cell. So in CMOS SRAM cell, like we have seen, this is an inverter a CMOS inverter. This is another CMOS inverter connected in cross-coupled form. That is, output of one is connected to input of the other, and vice versa. This can be accessed through two transistor switches, M3 and M4, and connected to bit line VC and VC bar. Now, one of the advantage, the biggest advantage of static CMOS circuit or CMOS circuit is its power consumption, its low power consumption. So this CMOS SRAM cell also possesses this advantage because, like we have seen in the previous discussion, there will never be a path from VDD to ground, because you will always find one of these two transistors in the branches is off. Whether it is storing 0 or 1, one of the transistor in both of the branch is always off, so there will never be a path from VDD to the ground. So there won't be any static power consumption, so there won't be any dissipation of power. There will be, if at all there is a dissipation of power in standby mode, it is because of the leakage current, and that too specifically through the PMOSes. That's the disadvantage or the limit. So that's a disadvantage or limitation of the circuit, that there is a possibility of leakage current. But the advantage is low power consumption, standby power consumption is the biggest advantage. So this is the biggest advantage of this circuit. Second is noise immunity. Like we have said, noise immunity basically depends upon VOH and VOL value. In this case, your VOH value will always be VDD, because when these transistors are on, they will present very small resistance. So your VOH value is a kind of short circuit here whenever one of these transistor is on. Of course, remember they are never on. This will never happen simultaneously, but these are two different cases I'm showing here. So this will be always pulled high to VDD through a small resistance, and whenever it is pulled down through the small resistance. So it will be, its VOL value will be 0. So its noise margin is far better than other configurations. It is also able to operate at the lower power supply. So VDD normally 5 volt is used, but even this circuit can be operated at lower power supply by changing the characteristics of the doping concentration and other characteristics of the MOSFETs. This operation at the lower power supply can be achieved. But of course, there are certain disadvantages. So this is advantage. These are three advantages, or the um, upside of this CMOS SRAM cell. But of course, it has some downsides as well. It has larger cell size, because the number of transistor here, you can compare with the resistive load. There were only 4 transistor. Here there are 6 transistor in one cell. So the size of the cell is larger. There is another disadvantage as compared to the depletion mode MOSFET or depletion load inverter SRAM cell, that there were only NMOSes in the depletion load inverter SRAM cell, but here there is a PMOS and NMOS. So while fabricating it, you need to fabricate for PMOS as well as NMOS. So you have to create N-tub. So either twin tub technology need to be used for the fabrication, or SOI, that is silicon on insulator, need to be used. This is downside of this. Then there is a problem that we have already discussed, a latch-up problem, which is a very common problem in CMOS circuits. There are parasitic transistors. If you remember, there are 2 parasitic transistors, PNP and NPN transistors are there, which are connected in this way. Okay, so they are back to back connected, and because the collector current feeds to the base of this and collector current of this feeds to the base of this, so the current goes on ever increasing. So the power, it results in large power consumption, as well as it may result in catastrophic breakdown because of the very large current. So these are the downsides of the circuits, the latch up problem and larger sensor. But of course, latch up problem can be prevented by using various techniques. Uh, so that's a good thing. In this case, you can see in earlier case in the resistive load there was a pull-up NMOS transistor, but here it is pull-up PMOS transistor, and they are connected to the ground. And because uh, PMOS passes VDD uh, in better than passing 0 or than NMOS, so it can pull up this charge line to VDD, unlike resistive load inverter which was pulling it to 3.5 volt, but in this case it will be 5 volt. So your charge VC and VC bar will be 5 volt. That's another advantage or the upper side of this circuit. Uh, Now the power consumption, obviously when you have pull-up transistors which are permanently connected to ground, uh, which are so they are always on, so power consumption will increase, but this can be reduced further by using the periodic pre-charge circuit, and like the dynamic CMOS we have studied, there will be periodic pre-charge for this, so the equalization can be carried out periodically. So of course there are few downside of this circuit, but these downside of the circuits can be restricted or prevented in the circuit, and they cannot overshadow the advantages that this type of SRAM cell possess. So these are widely used in the memory for the fabrication. Uh, so I hope you understood this. So let's continue our discussion about the SRAM cell, and let's talk about the layout of the SRAM cell. So first we'll see SRAM layout of the resistive load inverter. Now how to draw this? Okay, so I have drawn it vertically, but you could have drawn it horizontally as well, because according to the convention we expect that VDD line to be at the top and ground line to be at the bottom, and rest of the circuit should be drawn between the VDD and ground. That's why the convention says, but here it has been drawn uh, in in a horizontal format. The VDD and ground, you can see they are not horizontal, but they are vertical. It's okay. It doesn't make much difference even if it doesn't follow the convention. Okay, but it gives us exactly so this we can it gives us better association between this circuit and the layout if we draw like this. So drawing of stick diagram become easier. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll draw the beat line first. Okay, these are the column lines. Now there are 1 2 3 4 transistors and 5 yeah sorry 1 2 3 4 4 transistors are there. As of now we are not considering this pull-up transistor, we are just drawing for one cell, so we are not considering the pull-up transistor in this. Okay, so we have to draw 4 transistor. So we'll draw one polysilicon layer. In the polysilicon layer we will draw one diffusion layer. So this diffusion layer is nothing but when it crosses this polysilicon, it forms a transistor which is nothing but M3, the switch. Now here you can see drain of this switch is connected to, because normally current flow in this direction, so we can call this drain. Of course in transistor because of its in MOSFET, because exactly it is exactly symmetric, so any of the terminal can be used as a drain and source, it doesn't matter much. But here we will consider this as a drain. Okay, so this is drain of M3, so this is M3 and it's drain of M3, so this is drawn. Now the drain here you can see sorry because this is drain of the uh, M3. So this drain is connected to beat line. Now this is source, right? So this is nothing but the source of this. The source of this transistor is connected to drain of M1. So I'll draw another diffusion line, so which will be drain of M1, right? So as this become drain, this will become source, right? Okay, and then uh, you can say this is drain. So we know that the sources of these two is connected to ground, right? So source of this is connected to ground. You can see here the source is connected to ground. Also, uh, there is another transistor which can be shown here is M4, right? So before that, before we go to M4, let's look at the uh, another transistor. So this entire thing is drain. This entire thing is drain, and this is source, which is connected to ground. Now we have this transistor M4. Now while fabricating M4, drain of M2 is connected to source of M4. So this is source of M4, and this is uh, so this is source of M4, and this is drain of M4. The drain of M4, you can see it is connected to M2 through this. Okay, so that's about the connection transistors. Just go through it once so you will understand it better. I know it's very difficult to show it using the PPT. It's better to draw on board, so it can be explained better by drawing it on board. But with the limited resources, we have to do like this. Now, once we draw all this, we have to fabricate these resistors. Now, here you can see uh, the uh, drain of this and the source of this M1 and M3, they are connected to the resistor. So this is how the polysilicon resistor is fabricated. Now this polysilicon resistor, there is another branch of this resistor which is connected to source of M4. So here you can see it is connected to the source of M4, and then it is extended. The common point is connected to VDD. So this is the common point which is connected to the VDD. So this is how a stick diagram can be drawn for uh, SRAM using resistive load inverter. So using this stick diagram, you can draw the mask layout, which is shown here. So by using the lambda rules, the mask layout can be drawn. Okay, you can draw this and verify this with your design. Uh, the question has been asked in exam once, so this is an important question with exam points of view. Okay, then let's try to draw a static SRAM cell using CMOS, and let's try to draw a stick diagram for this. Now in this case, I have added a few animations so that it will be easier for us to understand. Okay, so here I am going to use a convention that the VDD should be at the top and ground should be at the bottom, and the rest of the circuit should lie between VDD and ground. So let's first draw the bait lines which are horizontal, uh, then sorry, which are vertical, and using metal, and then I'll draw the VDD and ground. Okay, now here you can see there are these are two metal lines, different metal lines, because beat lines are also implemented using metal, and ground, row select and VDD are implemented using metal. So these are two different metal layers. So first metal layer is blue and second metal layer is black. So VDD is here and ground should be at the bottom. That's a convention, let's say, and that's why even though RS is actually ground is here, so we could have drawn it here if you just have one-to-one relation between this diagram and the stick diagram. But according to the convention, ground has to be at the bottom. That's why it is drawn here, and RS is drawn here. Okay, you can draw with the one-to-one relation also, but if you want to follow the convention, it should be like this. Now, uh, uh, what we'll do is the same way. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 transistors are there, out of which 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3, 4 are NMOSes. So let's first draw the NMOSes. So for NMOSes, diffusion layer has been drawn. Now I'll extend the gate. Initially, I'll just draw a small polysilicon. You can draw small polysilicons over here. So we form 4 transistors. Now let's see how they are connected. So this will be my M3. So because I will start from the left hand side, this is M3, and here you can see drain of M3 is connected to the bit line. So what I'll do is I'll draw extend this bit line or the metal line to connect to the drain. So this is drain of M3, right? Next, because this is drain, so this will become source of M3. So this is M3, right? Now source of this M3 is connected to drain of M1. So that's why the next transistor, which is nothing but at the cross point of this diffusion layer and polysilicon, is M1, and it is connected to the drain. So they share this diffusion area. So this is source and this is drain. As this is drain, this become source of M1, right? As this is source, now here you can see source of M1 and source of M2 are connected. So the next transistor would be M2, and this would be source, and because this is source, so this becomes drain of M2. And this is so what we have done, we have started from the left hand side. We first fabricated M3, then we saw M1, then we have reached to M2, and drain of M2 is connected to source of M4. So this is source of M4, and drain of M4 is connected to bit line. So this is drain of M4, which is connected to bit line using this metal connection. Okay, so this gives us idea about the transistors. So these are NMOSes. At least we have drawn stick diagram from NMOSes. Okay, now you can see here M3 is M3 is connected to RS, so it can be extended further to RS. Okay, and after, whenever there is a connection of two different layers, a contact point is used, and RS is also connected by using a contact point. Now next, we know that there is a ground connection between this the common point of source of M1 and M2, so which is extended further for the ground point, and at the there will be contact point for this ground here and here, right? Next, we are done with this part. So we are done with this connection, we are done with all this transistor, we are done with this source, we are also done with this connection. Okay, now let's fabricate the PMOS. So for that, we will extend this gate, because this M1 and M5 are sharing their gates. That's why we have extended this M1 gate, and M2 is also sharing its gate with M6. So that's why this polysilicon for M2 is extended for M6. So there is a M6 and there is M5 over here. Now in M5 and M6, you can see their sources are connected together and tied to VDD. So these are their sources. So they are connected together and tied to VDD. So this is what the structure would look like. So okay. Now next thing you can see, drain of M5 is connected to drain of M4. So this drain M5 and M1 should be connected like this. So this is what the connection would look like, right? Similarly, drain of M6 is connected to drain of M2. So this would be the next connection, right? So this gives all the connection. Now we are left with this part, right? So we'll connect this to the RS. So you can see here there is a connection. We'll extend this to row select line or word line, and we will get the entire stick diagram ready with us. So this is how a stick diagram would look like. Now if you know this kind of structure or stick diagram, I'll suggest you to go in the same way for the resistive load type inverter, and you can draw the stick diagram like this. So the base weights, VDD to the top, VDD at the top, ground at the bottom, RS halfway down this, and you start with this left hand transistor M3, M1, go on connecting them, M2, M4, and then it is connected to bit line. So you complete this connection. After this, you connect this, Once you are done with this, now the NMOS part is done. Of course, you can connect this also if you want. Then so you are done with the lower part of the circuit. Of course, you need to connect this to ground. So the lower part of the circuit is done. Now you have to focus on the upper part, that is these PMOSes. For this, you have to use uh, a different a line which is of yellow color, which indicates the N sorry, P diffusion. So this P diffusion is drawn, and from the common point of this, it is connected to VDD, and then the connection is made as per shown in the diagram. The drains are shorted, and the drains are shorted. So this will give you the complete streak diagram. So I hope this is clear to you. And from this stick diagram, we can draw the mask layout. Oh, the one thing is remaining. You can see here the gate is connected to drain of this common point of the drain, and this gate is connected to common point of the drain. So here we are supposed to connect it here, and here we are supposed to connect like this. So we can make this connection using the metal. So this is the one connection where the drain of M1 is connected to gate of M2. M2 and M6, and the vice versa. So by using this, you can draw the mask layout, which would look like this. If you follow the lambda rule, you can draw a static a mask layout for the structure. So this is a mask layout for one cell. It can be because we have discussed that memories are have the uniform fabrication or uniform cell structure. That's why their layout are very uniform. So the same cell can be repeated 4 times in a row and 4 times in column. So 16 cell such can be used. So the same mask can be repeated 16 times to give us entire 4x4 RAM structure. So this is the 4x4 CMOS RAM structure, CMOS SRAM structure. So we'll stop our discussion here. So I hope you have understood this. Just go through it once. You try to draw all these stick diagrams and all the layouts on your own, and you will understand it better way. So at the end of this, we'll give you assignments where you have to draw these stick diagrams using electrical software. We'll stop here.